a question that comes up for me is, because we talked to you also in the Healing from Childhood Trauma event, like what's the difference between someone who has experienced trauma as a whole or someone with PTSD specifically? Is it just like one person is labeled this and another person isn't? Like, what, is there a difference?
Yeah, it's the set of symptoms really that it's a cluster into the diagnosis of PTSD. And so other kind of traumas, for me, most every diagnosis can be tracked back to some kind of trauma in the client's past. So the diagnosis is really dependent on the cluster of protectors that tend to dominate after the trauma. So, people with what's called borderline personality disorder, for example, often had a, chronic sex abuse history. And so there are certain protectors that get elevated in that context and form that diagnostic profile. And people with PTSD, for various reasons about why their protectors manifest in those particular ways, it's just a different profile, but it all tracks back to trauma for me.
Okay.
So.
Got it. Thank you. That just kind of came to me in the moment of, is there actually, the difference between the two? So, okay, here's another question. Another thing I've noticed as I've been researching more things about PTSD is something called C PTSD. What is that, and what is the difference? And is there any difference in how you can help people using IFS with C PTSD?
So, there's single episode trauma, which will create PTSD because you'll have a lot of those symptoms from one episode. And then there are people who were abused or traumatized on a regular basis through their childhoods. And that's called complex PTSD. And so there are differences. There's such a thing as betrayal trauma, which doesn't happen in single episode usually, like a car crash or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But when, as a child, your caretaker betrays you and does it over and over, then then certain protectors are gonna come up, like parts that don't trust anybody and won't let you get close to anybody, and will dissociate very readily because you had to dissociate to survive the chronic kinds of stuff. And so those kinds of clients are longer term. It just takes a lot longer to convince those parts that it's safe to open up in there. And single episode PTSD is very easy to treat, actually.